You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki. 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, how best to love yourself. How is it that we can love others so deeply and so easily, and yet struggle to love the one person we're with our entire life? From birth to death, the one constant is you. And still, for so many of us, that relationship with self, is the hardest one of all. So what does it actually mean to love yourself well? And how do you do it? Because most of us have never really learned that. And sometimes it feels like it's even rare to meet someone who's been loved thoroughly well by their parents or even their partners. So, how best to love yourself? Today, I want to offer two perspectives that's really changed the game for me. Not as theories, but as practices. The first is this: that self-love does not work the same way as self-improvement. Because we often think of loving ourselves as like wanting to improve ourselves, become some better version, fix something that's fixable, growing to become the more ideal version of me. But here we must slow down and take a close and careful look. Because if self-improvement has anything to do with scanning for flaws or scrutinizing yourself, looking for what's not yet enough or what could be better, even if your intention is to love yourself better, if the attention is placed on what's not quite there yet, then we're sending our energy, our attention to the lack of what's there. And therein lies the irony, because as long as we're sending our attention and energy to lack, the relationship with self is always leaning towards self-punishment. And if you're constantly relating to yourself through punishing what's wrong or not quite good enough, you're quietly reinforcing self-rejection. And I know I've covered this on my podcast before, but I can't say it enough because it's such a huge wake-up call to so many of us that have been good girls in the name of self-improvement. It doesn't mean that growth is wrong, and it definitely doesn't mean that we stop evolving. What it does mean is that the original drive, the motivating factor behind wanting to improve, is kind toward self rather than, oh, I can't accept myself until I fix myself. So that it starts with wholeness rather than disapproval. And if you're anything like me, I'm guessing that It kind of like flips the script on ourselves to begin with, oh, I am already enough as I am? Like, really? There's almost a disbelief to that because we're so not used to accepting ourselves as we are. But if we try it on, if we say, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, and I still am growing, I still am learning, I still am improving, then the growth becomes an expansion. It becomes an unfolding. It becomes love expressing itself as its next evolution, not a correction of something that's been broken. Okay, so that was a huge one for me. And now I want to move on to the second perspective. And I'm going to say the phrase in Japanese because it's something that I've been sharing with my community here. And it's this. 結果が出ない時こそ自分をもっと信じる. It means when results aren't showing, that's exactly when you believe in yourself more. Ooh, this one lands for me because it's still something that I actively try to remind myself and to put into practice. Because the truth is that when things are going well, loving yourself isn't hard. If anything, it's maybe automatic. When you're achieving, performing, moving forward, achieving and getting the results that you're going for, it's natural to feel good about yourself because the performance is there, the results are there, and that's not when love, true love, is tested. Love that is not attached to performance, measurement, or results. Love based on being and isness. Love just because you are who you are, not because of what you did or some award you got. That kind of love, as a matter of fact, can only reveal itself when the performance drops. Not when you're shining, but when you aren't. Perhaps you're struggling. Perhaps you're having a hard time meeting your own expectations. You feel like you've not done enough, like you fell short, or maybe you feel like you aren't enough. I'll bet you that most of us have good friends, honest friends, who've stayed with you during such darker times. The ones who didn't withdraw, the ones who didn't abandon you, the ones who see you and stay anyway, rain or shine. You know what that kind of love feels like. And at some point, we must learn to become that for ourselves. Can you take your own side when you know you've just failed? When you know you've flunked your own expectations? Can you take your own side when you're also disappointed in yourself for not meeting those self-expectations? Can you speak to yourself with kindness and generosity? And I mean the generosity, like spaciousness of heart, when your results don't yet match your efforts. Because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where self-love, love, the real kind, becomes real. When it's not attached to performance, when it's not attached to doing, it's attached to who you are, the being. And this is why we must call self-love a practice, because it's not something you achieve. It's something you remind yourself of and you consciously choose again and again. Not by improving yourself into being worthy, but believing in and standing in your worthiness, even when, and especially when, it looks like things aren't working. So the question isn't, can I love myself when I'm doing well? But rather, how do I love myself when I'm not doing well? That's where real love begins. Thank you for listening. If you missed the recent Kizuki Journaling online session, the on-demand replay is now available at maey.live under On Demand. And if you'd like to be the first to know when the next live session opens, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter at the bottom of maey.live or kizukijournaling.com.